You know how Xiaomi has always been talking about how great their cameras are? Well, I decided to take this camera's photo taking capabilities in depth to see if this is really a smartphone with the best cameras, especially with this price range. Now first, let's get into detail on what exact camera lenses that this phone has to elevate your photography experience on the Xiaomi 14. So it uses a Leica Summilux next generation Leica Optics triple 50 megapixel camera setup, where the main lens is a 23mm f1.6 aperture lens, the telephoto lens is a 75mm f2.0 aperture lens, and the ultra-wide lens has a 14mm focal length with a f2.2 aperture lens. Now for those of you who are not familiar, a Leica Summilux lens is known to be having a very high quality optics, and of course aperture value refers to the opening of the lens with a lower number of the aperture, indicating that there is more light going into the lens. So in case you did not know, now you know, my friends. Now let's start with the high megapixel mode, since all of the lenses has 50 megapixels. Hence you can take high resolution photos for all of the focal length, which gives an ultimate versatility in post based on the exact focal length that you choose. And of course, since the megapixels is really high, you can always reframe the shot right after you've taken a photo. And just so you know, we're looking at an average file size between 15 megabytes to 20 megabytes, which I have to say has a perfect balance of size of the image and also the overall image quality. Now, as for the ultra-wide lenses, I've said this before and I'll say it again, that the ultra-wide lenses on the Xiaomi flagship has always been some of my personal favorites, and these 14mm shots have a perfect focal length to give you a nice ultra-wide perspective without any barrel distortion. And what's extra sweet is that it is sharp from edge to edge, where some smartphones tend to lose the details towards the edges. Then as for the main lenses, these photos were taken without any effort to get the best image possible. I just took out the phone, take a picture, and that's it. No adjustments needed, or I don't need to tap the screen. And there's also a significant upgrade to the camera shutter button too compared to the previous Xiaomi 13, and here's where Xiaomi has cleverly provided the best focal length of 23mm, so the pictures are not too zoomed in and has the right amount of wideness to the photos. And even at aperture f1.6, the photos were sharp thanks to the high 50 megapixel count, and the amount of detail captured from the dynamic range point of view was also really great as well. As you can see in these photos, from differentiating the shadows of the trees to the extremely exposed skies, the photo had all of the details with the right amount of saturation. Now speaking of saturation, as mentioned in my first impressions video, the Leica Authentic and the Leica Vibrant is also present in this Xiaomi 14, and all the pictures that taken in this video will be based on Leica Vibrant, since I do prefer this particular option. Now switching over to the telephoto lenses. Now one of the main things that I've noticed compared to other smartphones is that I always hated the inconsistency of colors between every single lenses, and it's lovely to know that this Xiaomi 14, as seen in these shots, going from 23mm to 46mm to even 75mm was super seamless. And while you can zoom up to 60 times digital zoom, but my sweet spot would be up to 30 times zoom, but of course keep in mind that you'll need a lot of light to get the best overall image. Then as for portrait mode, there'll be two focal lengths that you can choose within the app, either 23 or 60mm, which was nice for situations where you may not have the space or even time to come closer to get a nice portrait style photos. Now what's lovely is that the portrait mode works very well on objects too, with the overall nicest shallow depth of field with tech sharp focus, where the 60mm shots are at aperture 2.0, also filling up the images nicely. And it goes without saying that the portrait mode for humans also look flawless, with amazing skin tones and a perfect blend of dynamic range and background blur as well. And the master lens system also performed very well with its dedicated effect presets for the 35mm documentary preset, the swirly bokeh at 50mm, portrait at 75mm, and soft focus at 90mm. Now one major image quality difference compared to the previous Xiaomi 13 is the skin tones on this phone, because the overall pleasing images for the selfie photos is really great, and here's where you can really see Leica and Xiaomi working its image processing magic on its amazing skin tones and a very beautiful bokeh, whether or not it's against the light or even if the light is shining in the camera's favor. So overall, I would rate the daytime photos on the Xiaomi 14 a solid 9 out of 10, because I do feel that the portrait mode on objects could be a tiny bit better, specifically for a more complicated type of shape. Now if you guys are enjoying this video so far, a nice big thumbs up would be very much appreciated, as these kinds of videos does take a very long time. Thank you very much in advance. Let's move on. Next, switching over to the nighttime photos. Starting from the high megapixel photos, similar to the daytime shots, the quality remained consistent throughout all of the lenses. And this time around, you'll see an average reduction of the file size between 8 to 11 megabyte instead. Then the night shots using the ultra-wide lenses look great, capturing perfect light reflections, even at darker environments. And once again, most smartphones does not do very well on their ultra-wide lenses at night, and it's lovely to see that the images look very high in quality as seen in these sample photos. Then as for the main lenses, here's where you'll see how great the nighttime dynamic range is, as you'll see a huge reduction in lens flare on the images taken. However, when you switch to the telephoto lenses, I would advise not to go beyond 75mm, which is about 3.2 times zoom, since the maximum of the actual telephoto lenses on an optical level is that, where beyond that it is actually a digital zoom all the way, so you might see a little degradation of the image, but still quite usable too. Now, to my surprise, the portrait mode at night also performed exceptionally well for humans and even in objects too. And to extend my surprise even more, the nighttime selfie images also performed very well, especially for the portrait mode as well, with no noise seen in the images at all. So from a night photo taking perspective, I would give this phone an 8.5 out of 10, as I feel that the image processing for the ultra-wide lenses as seen in this photo should match the image quality of the main lenses, since it also has a 50 megapixel lens specifically for the lens flare. So that's my in-depth camera test on the photos taken on the Xiaomi 14. Now, if you think that this phone is for you, I will leave the price and all the interesting promo details currently going on in the description below. And stay tuned for my in-depth video camera test on the new Xiaomi 14 Ultra, which I'm going to do a video test on that. And to answer the question if this is the best smartphone photography for the phone's price and the compact size, that is a resounding yes. And if you want to see how this phone holds up against the Xiaomi 13, check out this video over here.